Today's interview with Alethea Jacob is like a masterclass in heart energy. During our interview, we talk about the tools of divination, what they are, and what each one is good for. And then, way at the end, we talk about mediumship and why people go to mediums and what they expect out of that kind of conversation. Really interesting. So, stay tuned for that. Here's Althea's bio. With 4 decades of experience, Alethea Jacob is a seasoned intuitive, spiritual life coach, teacher, and speaker. As a certified practitioner in NLP and hypnotherapy, she brings a unique blend of techniques to her practice. Althea's dedication extends globally, having worked with clients and students worldwide. Throughout her career, she has been instrumental in guiding individuals to transform their business, enhance their lives, and rediscover their passion, and joy for living. Here's our interview with Alethea Jacob. Althea, it's so great to have you here on the Afterlife Files. Welcome.
Thank you, Scott. I'm delighted to be here today.
Yeah. Well, everybody, one of the things that we discovered when Althea and I got to be here is that the two of us are really involved with the Monroe Institute. And so we're going to just do a little loving on Monroe here for a second, and then we'll get into the interview proper because I know you want to know about that too. Althea, how is it that you found out about the Institute and, where is it in your life? And have we met each other there?
Okay, well, absolutely. I love to talk about Monroe. It's one of my favorite topics. In fact, I love it so much. I wrote a book about them, and we'll talk about that more later. A little sneak preview there.
Well
But
done.
back in the mid 90s, I was working for a Fortune 500 company, and the one of the vice presidents of that company and I were really great friends and sisters, and we sort of explored a lot of metaphysical things together. Whenever they came up, we would take healing courses places, and we stumbled across this place in the Blue Ridge Mountains called the Monroe Institute. Um, that just sounded really interesting. And we're like, what is this gateway experience thing? And, we read about it. And both of us, because we were in a corporate environment and we had very logical, scientific kind of jobs, we were intrigued by the idea that you could use technology and science to actually help expand consciousness. And so we decided, you know what, let's take a road trip. I was living in New York at the time. And it's like, let's go down, let's sign up for it. We'll take it together and see what happened. Well, that was about 27 years ago. And I fell in love with the Monroe Institute. Not only is it just a beautiful place with people whose hearts just are so welcoming and inviting and inclusive of whatever you are, whatever you bring, whatever shape you're in, when you find yourself crossing their threshold, they just love, accept, and help and meet you where you're at and help you get to where you want to go. When it comes to exploring consciousness, being curious about trying different tools, and just seeing what happens when you allow yourself to come into that resonance and harmony that's possible with the assistance of not only the tools, but the guidance and the programs that were created over the many, many years of research. So that became my go-to place ever since then. Whenever I had a crisis in my life or just wanted to go explore and have some curiosity, I would go look. Back then, they didn't have quite the online robust presence they have today. So you actually got a catalog in the mail, and I would look to see, oh, what programs are coming up this year or next year. And I would go take different ones. Or when I was at one, they would give us little commercials and have different instructors come in and talk about other programs that were there and give you the opportunity for your intuition to go, pay attention. Oh, that's one, go find out when that one is, And more often than not, before I would leave one program, I would be signed up for another one a year or two later, if not more frequently than that.
So your
And
gig is divination, and
mhm,
um, so how did Monroe help you open up those talents?
sure. So when I knew that I was a little different from my very early on in my life. When I was about 7 years old, I could see these light beings that were across the top of my ceiling that sort of looked like big fireflies. Um, but or you know how they represent Tinkerbell as the light sometimes? It was like there was a whole bunch of those that would fly around my bedroom at night, and they would talk to me, and it was not out loud talking, it was telepathy. But I realized, like, oh, I'm talking to some beings here, and they were loving and wise. And as I grew up, I would talk to my mom about it, and my mom was extremely intuitive, and I really bless and thank her for not shutting me down. And my grandmother was also, her mom was also extremely intuitive. And basically, I'm the eldest daughter of the eldest daughter of an eldest daughter. And we just had intuition running rampant in our whole family line. And so when I actually was a young teenager, they coached me and said, you need to start developing tools so you can be of service to others. And so I started learning how to read auras and read tarot cards and angel cards and pretty much anything I could get my hands on. And I studied and trained with various teachers in New York and all over the place, wherever I could go. And unfortunately, back in those days, it was a lot harder because we didn't have the internet where you could just zoom on in for a lecture or take a workshop. I actually had to go there, but that was fine. I've been to about 30 countries around the world and most of the states in the of the U.S. It was this constant quest, but the one constant place was Monroe, because I found that no matter where I was, if I went for a week for a residential program, even if the topic didn't necessarily have something to do with refining that specific skill of mediumship or clairvoyance or whatnot, right? I found myself through the process of tuning in and listening and quieting my mind and going through some of the exercises that are intended to help you pay attention to what happens when you expand your consciousness and direct you to meet, whether it's guidance or um, different aspects of self, or to go to different places that I maybe hadn't thought about, as far as dimensional places or portals to places, or and whether they're constructs of our mind or not, it didn't matter. It was sort of like go with an open mind, have a sense of curiosity. But for sure, every time I got back, my skills were better. My information that I would retrieve when I was reading, no matter what skill or tool I was using, seemed to be much more accurate. And I think, honestly, Scott, I think what happened was by going there, by investing my time and money and the intention to learn and get better so I could be of better service to others and have that open heart happen, that holding the open heart space and expanding that out allowed other beings to say, oh, she's serious. Okay, yeah, we'll help her. And as I would then open up, I had a bigger capacity, maybe is a way to put it. It wasn't just this little garden hose anymore. It was much more of a fire hose of connection. And so instead of just getting a word here or a word there, I would get like a quantum download of, oh, here's the whole story. You just have to unroll it and share it at your own pace. So
I
yeah,
think
so it's
that's
it's a beautiful
interesting
place.
because, when I studied with Bob Monroe, he used to talk about how this work um, place more light within you. It created more space inside of
Yeah.
you for this work to happen through you. So it sounds like
Yes.
we came in the same
Totally
space.
agree.
Hmm.
Totally agree about that. Yeah. Yeah. And then within the last, oh, maybe let's see, a little more than 15 years, I had a few major life crises. My brother died at age 41 unexpectedly. Um, and that put me into kind of a dark night of the soul where I was like, spirit, I work with you guys all the time. Like, no heads up. What was that about? Right. But I was a little, honestly, I was a little PO'd. And so I was like, well, okay, then I'm not going to work for you anymore. Right. And then a couple of years went by and I just was sticking to my more mainline type of job. And I realized I'm like, I feel unfulfilled. My soul wants me to be doing this work. That's part of my purpose. My life purpose is to be a bridge to help people make the connections, whether it's the more worldly earth plane stuff to the spiritual, or help the spiritual folks make a bridge back this way so that they can communicate and inspire and have people be curious about the different tools. So when I went to Monroe, I after he had died, I went back to a Lifeline course of all things, which was the perfect course. And this massive healing came through. And I realized what I had been holding on to and what I was so mad about. And it actually turned out I was just guilty. I felt guilty because I was his older sister. I was supposed to take care of him. And I felt like I had failed in taking care of him instead of realizing that he had free will and free choice, and his spirit did what his spirit needed to do. But so Monroe helped me get back on track. And then it was like, okay, full steam ahead, back to doing my metaphysical work. I actually left the corporate environment after 18 years with this company. Most of my friends and family thought it was nuts. They're like, oh, you're only 7 years away from retirement and all the benefits. And I'm like, you know what? When you get that clear message from spirit, I have to listen. And I know better now, and so I pretty much have devoted most of my adult life to being in the service of others and constantly working on the different tools, and you never know what tool you need in your tool belt, right? When
So
you're
I
coming across
yeah,
someone.
I would love for you to talk about the different kind of tools that you have learned
Sure.
and what they're particularly good at, why you'd use one tool and not another. So what
Okay,
are they
sure.
and why do you use them?
Okay, well, I have what I'll call them first is more the information gathering tools, right? I look at anything that I do with a client as either a healing or as life coaching, right? To give them either comfort, guidance, information that's useful to them. To me, a measure of was the session good or was our reading good was was this useful to you? Was this helpful? Did it bring you to closure? Did it give you some ideas? Did it feel right and move on? So whether it was reading cards like oracle cards or tarot cards or angel cards, that's a whole um, collection that are good for people that feel more they feel more at ease at looking at something with you instead of just trusting and knowing that, oh, you can just sit there and get information, right? So for somebody who's kind of new to receiving a reading, using tools like the angel cards or tarot cards or oracle cards, that really helps put them at ease. There's no power in and of the cards themselves, right? There's certain significances of different cards in the traditions of whichever tool you're using, but the information's coming through me as the channel directly, right? From spirit through me, or from their guides through me, or from their angels or loved ones in spirit through me. But for some people, it just makes them feel more at ease. I can look at somebody's aura, and basically, energy and information are two sides of the same coin. So if something has energy, you can get information from it, right? So if you look at somebody's aura and you tap into that, I can tell an awful lot about all the different layers of their being, their physical body, their etheric, their emotional state, their mental state, their spiritual state. And at the very edge of the aura there, that's where their loved ones and spirits, their guides and angels hang out, and the fringes, and that's where some other messages can come. So I trained and learned how to tap into that. Then there's just clear audience in general, which is learning how to listen to the messages, right? So if somebody asks a question and says, well, can you just clairvoyantly or clairaudiently tune in? Okay, what's the question? Let's put it out there. And then my my ears, my eyes, my internal knowing, spirit, or whoever was sending the messages would impress upon me a certain message to share with them. And honestly, that was one of the hardest parts when I first started doing this work professionally. Was it comes through, all the information always comes through the filter of the channel. And so there's a part of us that feels like, are we making this up? This just popped in my head. Why did this pop in my head? And learning how to trust that, well, if you're kind of in a neutral state and you ask a question and you open to a benevolent source for an answer, whatever pops in your head is going to be the answer that that person needs. And trusting that and having the courage to risk articulating whatever that is, no matter how weird it is. The other day I was doing a reading for somebody and she said, well, can you kind of prove that, you're really in touch with this loved one in spirit? And I was like, okay, let me see what I get. And I said, okay, she's showing me frogs. There's something about frogs that's, which is kind of like a bizarre thing, right? All of a sudden, I'm in my mind's eye, I'm seeing frogs. And the woman starts laughing and saying, oh my God, mom used to collect frogs. She had little jade frogs and glass frogs and crystal frogs. And I'm like, okay, good. Thanks, mom. I knew I got her. Right. So, that sometimes, but it's kind of scary being on the receiving side of something obscure that comes through. But sometimes it's those really weird, obscure messages that are the exact thing that the person needs to hear in order to not only believe that you're in touch with some aspect of that loved one, but that it's meaningful and it validates and can help them have that closure or guidance that comes.
So how did you
As far
gain
as
that
other,
how did you gain that
go ahead.
courage in order to speak the truth of what came through? Because I'm sure through some
Yeah.
of your filters, you're going, what the heck?
Right. Well, I think when it came to the mediumship aspect of what I do, spirit kind of tricked me into it, to be honest. I was working, I was working psychic fairs back in the New York and Connecticut area, and I was doing it intentionally as a psychic boot camp for myself. I wanted to develop my skills. And the way that the fairs worked in those days is the organizer would rent a ballroom in a hotel, and in this particular group, they would travel to 8 different places and rotate. So every 2 months, you were back at the same hotel in that particular city in New York or Connecticut. And so he would have anywhere from 6 to 10 different psychics that had their own specialties. And a client would walk in and they would go up to the desk and they would sign up for 15 minutes or a half hour, pick whoever they wanted to be with. The bell would ring. Somebody would come up to your table, hand you a ticket, have their name on it. And whether it was 15 minutes or a half hour, they'd sit down. 15 minutes later, the bell would ring. They'd get up and leave. So you needed to be able, or I needed to be able to quickly tune in. And they would say, well, I would say, how can I help you today? Oh, can you read my palm? Oh, can you give me a tarot spread? Oh, can you check into my aura? Oh, can you let me know some guidance from spirit about this, that, or the other issue? I hadn't done mediumship professionally up until a certain point when one day at the fair, the woman who used to be the main medium, she was out sick. And a woman came to the front and she was in tears. And the organizer turned to all of us that were present and said, hey, can any of you, do mediumship work? Barbara's not here today. And this lady really has a dire need. And I kind of was like, I'll give it a try. I said, look, you know, worst case, if I don't connect, give her her money back.
Yeah.
But I could see this woman was distraught, and it just, it tugged at my heart. I'm a very empathetic person, and when somebody's going through something emotional, there was like this natural healer in me that just wants to, give them a hug and help them somehow. So she sits down, and immediately I see next to her in my mind's eye this little boy, about 7 years old. He tells me, and I hear in my head, like I'm talking to him telepathically, like I had talked to the little light beings when I was younger. And he said his name was Tommy. And so I I'm like, okay, well, I said, I see your son is here. And he's showing me, he's about 7 years old, and I describe what he's looked like, and he tells me his name is Tommy. And the woman says, well, yes, I'm here for my son. We never called him Tommy. His name was Thomas. And I'm like, lady, you have no idea. I just pulled this rabbit out of the hat. And you're like, right. But she says, but he wasn't 7. He died, a couple weeks ago, and he was like 14. And so I asked in my mind, I asked the kid, why are you showing me you at this age? And he says, oh, I want my mom to know I'm okay. And I want her to understand and remember me this way before I got sick.
Ah,
This was the last time I was healthy. And I want her to really, remember that, because he basically declined quite a bit. So I tell her this. She starts crying, and she says, oh, that's true. At 7, right after his 7th birthday, he was diagnosed with childhood leukemia. But she was glad to know that he was okay. But then she says, well, can you prove it's him? I'm like, lady, you have no idea. Like I don't normally do this, lady, but this is common. So I'm like, all right, cool. So so then I asked the kid, I'm like, well, can you prove to me, so your mom knows? And he said, well, what if I show you my bedroom? So I asked her, would that help? Okay, yes. So all of a sudden he shows me, and that picture opens up in my mind's eye. And it's like I'm standing in the doorway of his room, and I see his little single bed is across the far end of the room. There's a window kind of by the foot of the bed. And then there's a shelf that's above the foot of the bed by the window, and there's a red fire engine on it. So I describe all this to the lady. Again, the waterworks start. She's like, oh my God, yes, that's really him. I'm like, good, good, good. Thank you. That was the first time I opened up to do mediumship for public, for somebody. And honestly, that was one of the most profound and accurate, free flowing, detailed session I can remember. And it truly, when I reflect back on it, it's because I had just opened my heart so much. My intention to serve, and just this poor woman was so distraught. It's like, okay, Spirit, just use me, help me, whatever she needs, help me figure this out, so I can give her some comfort. And I think basically, whenever we have that as our true intention, and we send out that love from our heart and the intention to be of service and help, spirit will, they'll do dances on the other side, they'll pull whatever strings they have to help us have that information. So since that was my first real experience with it, um, it gave me this sense of trust of, okay, as long as I'm in the right space and I'm open with that, I can trust what comes through. And now, meanwhile, I had heard, when I'm doing angel card readings or tarot card readings or palm readings or aura readings, obviously I'm hearing spirit at the same time, but I was able to have that comfort, or that little bit of wiggle room, where I knew what I was seeing usually represented this, or this card represented that. So I kind of had a crutch. When you just open up and you're like talking to some spirit of someone who's passed, there's not quite that same crutch. It's either you got them or you don't, right? You're either connected or you're not. So the fact that I had such a good experience that first time in helping has just made me really trust it. And whether they give me their name or not doesn't matter. And I tell the person that when I'm doing mediumship work, I said, look, the most important thing is this person has a message for you. I want to know what the message is. Why did this person come? I don't really care if it's your mom or your grandmother. There's a female ancestor who's here with this message for you. It might be, and sometimes I'll get, oh yeah, her name was Sally, or sometimes I'll describe her. Oh, well, she's about that tall. She had reddish auburn hair, and she always wore it in a bun, and she loved to sing, all the time, while she was cooking. Oh yeah, that's Nana. Or this woman is claiming that even though she's not your literal mother, she helped raise you. Oh yeah, that was, so I'll get it that way. I may not get all the time the actual name, but for me, the most important part, what's the so what? Why did this spirit show up? Right? What's the importance of this? And more often than not, the pattern that I've seen over the years, and I've talked to other mediums, and it seems like that it's a common thread, is to give closure, to bring comfort, to bring reassurance that we're okay, you're okay, we got your back now that I'm in spirit. I have more things I can do here to help than I ever could when I was on the other side of the veil. And to give some inspiration and guidance, So it's a very love-based communication that comes across. At least that's my experience of it.
So that requires you to be really good at trusting your intuitive hits.
Yeah.
And you have spent years and years now developing this perceptual sense that intuitive hits,
Yes.
you welcome them, and
Right.
that you're going to trust them, and you have a series of tools to interpret them, I'm assuming.
Yes. And whether it's using a pendulum for a quick question, or whether it is, one of my favorite things is I call them spiritual fortune cookies. It's grabbing a book, asking the question, and just cracking it open and getting that insight, kind of getting my analytical mind out of the way, because I have an analytical mind. I really do. I have a couple different degrees from school. I've worked in very analytical type jobs, and yet I have this whole other intuitive psychic side that I had to make sense of, and it's like, you know, you know, I guess back in the day when, the new age movement was big, about, I don't know, about 20 or 30, oh God, no, it's longer than that. It was the 80s. Oh my God, it was, all right, I'm older than I look. Uh, um, I was always searching for that, don't be flaky. Don't make this also woo-woo and weird. It's like we're designed to be intuitive. Our ancestors had phenomenal intuition, otherwise we wouldn't be here. They knew which cave had the saber-toothed tiger and which one was safe for the family to go into for the night, to have shelter, right? Over the generations, they, the shaman of the tribes, or the people, they knew which way to go, where the crops were, where the food sources were, where there be water, where there be safety. We live in a society now where our survival doesn't necessarily depend on our intuition, although I will tell you, intuition can be very helpful in avoiding really dangerous situations, and I'm glad that I have it. um, but I think also a way to develop it and learn to trust it is to start small. And I have this great little technique that I share with students that I'd love to share with your audience. It's really short and sweet,
Go
but
for it.
you for 1 month you keep an intuition journal. And so whenever you get an intuitive prompting, whether it's little or big, you get that journal, and then the first column you write down, what's the prompting? I thought I should take I-95 instead of the Merrick Parkway. Okay. And then next column, what did you do about it? I did not listen because I hate driving on the highway with the trucks, so I went on the parkway anyway. And then the third column, what's the result? Got stuck in traffic for about 3 hours because there was a deer hit and there was no way off the road. Okay. Right. So you start to just notice, right? Whatever happened. I pulled into the gas station. I got a prompting that I should go into the mini mart. I didn't need anything from the mini mart, but I went in anyway. And I saw a great friend that I hadn't seen in years from high school, and we were able to reconnect and had this great conversation. Okay. So the phone rings. Who do you think's on the phone? I thought it was so and so. Yes or no? So you just kind of go through. It can be a big thing, a little thing. But what this does is at the end of the month, you go back and you read everything that you wrote, and you will notice a pattern that when you listen to your intuition, you either avoid something bad or you wind up with a blessing or something good, unexpected happening. When you don't listen, it's the inverse. And sometimes you won't know. Like in the example of going to the mini mart, if I just kind of blew that off, I may never have known my good friend from high school was in there. And maybe I would find out later on, in a Christmas card, hey, I happen to be in your area. And I would wonder, But what that does, and you actually want to write it, you don't want to just imagine it. You want to write it down because you want to be able to see the evidence. You want to see the proof of it for yourself. Because for most of us, until we get our intellect to become the advocate for our intuition, it's a much more adversarial type of relationship. My intuition says go left. Okay. So my intellect says, well, let's go right just to make sure we weren't supposed to go that way, right? So for a lot of us, we have to get to the point where we have to prove to the intellect that, yeah, you know what, our intuition knows what it's talking about. So then once you go through that exercise, now the intellect's going, hey, intuition, what do you got for me? Oh, wait, did you just say something? Okay, it's paying attention, it's more engaged. And then what happens? Just like a little kid that wants to tell you a story, if you're too busy to listen, they might try, then they give up. But if you sit down and say, okay, honey, tell me your story. Oh, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened. Well, next thing you know, it's like it grows. And once your intuition knows you're paying attention, it doesn't just throw up the little trivial information here and there. It can actually start to help guide you in your life with many more significant, life changing, and important decisions. I've made two major moves cross country based on my intuition, saying, okay, let's go here. Let's go here. I'm in Wisconsin right now. I grew up in the Northeast. I've lived in New York and Connecticut. I've lived in Europe. I lived in LA, and then I got Wisconsin. Wow, Wisconsin.
Well, having grown up in
What?
Minnesota, I hope you love the cheese.
Oh my God. Yes. And I love the Midwest. I had no idea how nice it was here. Honestly, it's like the people are great. The cost of living is so cheap compared to every place else I've lived. So can have this great quality of life. The people are amazing. The nature is beautiful. If you can put up with the 2 to 3 weeks of, oh hell no, cold in the middle of winter, when this like polar vortex thing happens, if you can put up with that, you're golden. It's a beautiful place to live.
One of the things that you sparked on me is one of the advantages of the Monroe Institute is that whole brain thinking, that because they use binaural beat, it activates both the linear
Yes.
and the abstract side of the brain and helps you learn to work together, both sides working together, which
Yes.
is exact. And I love that where you said, okay, honey, tell me your story and let it roll out. Um,
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
so much to be gained from that. Start small, and
Right.
then as it works up
Right.
and you begin to trust it, the two halves of your
Yeah.
brain work together more often.
And
Yeah.
the way you start is with a sense of curiosity, right?
Oh,
Don't,
amen.
that make it fun, right? You don't want the first time you're tuning into your intuition to be about, well, should I marry him or not? Oh my, or should I quit this job and go start my own company? You want to have a little comfort level and confidence before you decide to make a major life change, based on what your intuition is telling you. So it's fun to start with the little things. You start with the very low risk and just experiment. But the more you experiment and the more you start to see for yourself that, wow, when I do listen to my intuition, I'm in the right place at the right time, meeting the right people for me to help them to help me help others. It's like this magical dance and flow begins to happen. And then you're like, well, why would I want to live my life any other way? If this is so easy and graceful, and it keeps me in that sense of flow, and it brings to me the people I need and the resources I need, or me to them if they need what I have, right? Because I think that's a core value a lot of people have is that need to be seen and appreciated and unconditionally loved for what we have to offer as well as what we can take, right? It's that give and take that makes life so meaningful and beautiful. And I think that's why spirit is so willing to work with us when we open our hearts in the service of others, because they say, oh, wait, there's an open window. Okay, let me come through. Because a lot of people just lock the windows and doors all the time. They haven't learned to trust that most of the forces that are around us are benevolent. And there are things that we can do to make sure that, well, before I do any work, I start with a prayer. I call out to those who guide and love me from above for guidance, protection, and connection. And I ask that the energies around me be of the highest vibration and light. Okay, now I'm good to go. I don't have to worry about anything, right? I've
And
set up the filters, right?
yep,
So
and
I don't
isn't
have
it
to worry
remarkable?
about it.
And isn't it remarkable how powerful the filters are? Because
Yes.
you're not touched by
Yes.
any weird little sludges.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. One of the things I know you talk about is how you get information from artwork. And
Yes.
and can you talk about that and what that process is like and what you can learn?
Yes, and I'm actually going to go reference back to my book for just a quick minute, because in it, it's a compilation of inspired writings that came through spirit. And when I got prompted to compile them into this book, and there's a section that I'll call them more like poetry kinds of inspired writings. And then there's a section of questions to answer if you're trying to figure out what you want to do in your life. And then there was another section that was, I'll just call them more random thoughts that were meant to spark different processes within us. And when I asked Spirit, so why should I share this with other people? And they're like, well, first, it wasn't just for you. But they said, whenever you connect with something that was channeled from spirit in that proper heart space, what it allows the viewer, the listener, um, to experience, it allows them to go up the back channel to the source that I was tapped into when I was bringing the inspired stuff through, or the painting, if you're looking at a painting that an artist was drawing, if you stand and you enter that painting, it allows you to backtrack up through the process that the artist used to that source of inspiration. When you listen to beautiful music that was channeled, the same thing. It allows you to go back, kind of like the salmon going upstream. It's like, yep, the information and the energy was coming this way, but the channel is open and it's there for you to go up. So even if you don't want to write a book or paint a painting, it allows you to get to that source of muse like creativity. So whether you're a businessman who's looking to come up with the next great project or collaboration for your business, or an inventor who's looking for the next important thing to bring forth to help society, or a musician who wants a song, or a healer who needs to get a healing vibration to help a particular illness or situation, each of those tools, each of those creative outputted products, the books, the paintings, the music, they can help you on when you're on the receiving side of that, or when you're experiencing it. You can use that as a way to get back in touch with whatever you need from source to help inspire your soul, heal, or bring through whatever you're looking to bring through, whether it's enhanced relationships with your children, whether it is creative ideas for a new business because you want to get out of the 9 to 5 grind and you want to do something more creative with your time and energy, or I mean, it's infinite opportunities because people will use it however they want. So to me, when when I got that insight, and that was part of the process of putting the book together, because I know a lot of people, they put books together and they're just vanity pieces, right? Or they're my ego. I'm this great person you should listen to, and I'm like, yeah, no. This was me basically taking dictation from spirit and writing as fast as I could what I was hearing or what was popping into my head, right? So I will take credit for being the conduit and for being smart enough to write it down and compile it in a book. And the only part I personally, Althea, wrote was the introduction. Everything else is straight from spirit. And I tell people right in the book, I want you to feel the energy in between the lines, feel the be in touch with the source, go back up the channel and experience that source of inspiration and creativity for yourself, because they're there waiting for you. you know it's like once there's a radio station that's there and you have one channel that's connected, you just have to change turn the dial and you can tune into whatever you want once you're there. So it's that to me is the beauty of anything that's channeled that way, anything that's artistic and creative. And I think, honestly, Scott, I think that's why those things speak to our soul. You
Mm.
know, why do we enjoy some of those things? Why do they move us? How, we say, oh, it touched me. Why? Oh, because it's reminding us of what's possible for ourselves and reminding us that there is this connection that we can access whenever we are in the right space or have that intention and open our heart to do so.
Yep. So you use a term spiritual response therapy. Is that kind of what we're talking about here?
Spiritual
Where we
response therapy,
respond to what's going on?
SRT is an actual tool. It's a system that was developed by a man by the name of Robert Dexler. And what he did is I'm pretty sure it was channeled through him as well, but it's a menu-based system where you use a pendulum to clear out things on a soul level. And the premise here is, if you think about even just the aura itself, right? We're most dense at the physical level, then we have our etheric level of energy, then we have our emotions, our thoughts, and our spiritual connection. Well, whatever forms, and the spiritual is the least dense, right? But that's kind of where the programming starts. And so you can almost think of it as a garden hose where there was this jet of whatever the instruction was from spirit. And this could be our spirit, it could be spiritual influences that we've taken on, it can be programming that's out there that's impacting our spirit. And so it works its way from the spirit down back through our thoughts, back through our emotions, through our energy, into our physical body. And so if I have this pain in my elbow, it could be from a relationship that I had, an energy I'm holding from something when my grandmother grabbed me when I was a kid and, just left an energetic imprint. And as I got older and that pattern started coming up, my elbow started hurting. Well, if you can identify where on a spiritual level is the source of that energy that's feeding into that problem that you're having on any of those other levels of physicality, energy level, emotional level, mental level, or even spiritual level for that matter, if there's dysfunction, if you clear it at that source, it's like taking the splinter out of the hand, right? The chronic the acute pain goes away, the power feeding into that problem goes away, and it can now heal up and clear out. And so this menu-based system helps you figure out, well, okay, what do I need to clear? And so you use a pendulum and you use that particular thing. But to me, spiritual response is, okay, so we're asking our higher selves for the spiritual root cause of whatever it is that we're questioning or dealing with or going through in this lifetime. And we ask spirit to clear it on that level. And so it basically shuts off the source that was feeding and allowing that particular problem or issue to continue in our life.
And I'm assuming that there's also a therapy for if it's other lifetimes, you know.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. There's multiple, it's like 40 pages of menus. And one of them is about past life influences and karmic overlays and that sort of thing as well. Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Yep.
And I know a lot of people ask me about past lives and what's my take on those. And I'm a certified hypnotherapist, and I've done past life regressions with clients. And one of the really interesting things is to be able to find verifiable evidence of, yeah, I remember living in this house and my name was X, and describing it. And then I'm like, all right, let's go do the research and let's go find that. And you can actually sometimes have that happen. Or if you resolve the problem, like there was a person that was petrified of water in this lifetime. And we did a regression and it turned out they drowned in a past life. And once we realized that and made it clear to their spirit that that was then, this is now, you don't have to hold on to that anymore, they were much more willing to go take some swimming lessons and go in the water, right? And the unnatural fear, because they said I never had a bad experience in this lifetime. Why is there this irrational fear of whatever? And I had something myself, that there was, for the longest time. Now, I grew up in Yonkers, New York, and it was very integrated. We had pretty much every culture you could think of there. I mean, my next door neighbors were from Jordan, and back in the day, right? And one of the things that I was very skeptical or cautious of, Indian, Pakistani type people. And and I'm a friendly, outgoing person. I'm like, I'm good with everybody pretty much. And I'm like, what is going on here with that? And so I had one of my teachers do a regression on me. And I had this scene come on, and I was this young Indian girl, and my husband had died, and they gave me something to drink, and it made me feel very drugged and out of it. But I remember them walking me up to a wall and dipping my hand in red paint or blood and putting it on a white wall, and then bringing me to a boat where my dead husband's body was with a whole bunch of flowers, and put me in it and lit the whole thing on fire.
Oh dear.
And it was at a time in that culture where the young bride would go, if the husband died, she went with him. And so I'm like, oh, well, no wonder I don't trust, on some level, it's like, oh, well, that explained it. And then once I understood that, I was like, oh, okay, I'm totally good. It's like, I have some really dear friends I mean, one of the people I worked with very closely is a healer. And he lives in LA. His name is Armin, and he's amazing. I met him at the Monroe Institute, and he's from that area. And I'm like, oh, okay. you know, totally healed it. So I'm like, all right, I don't know why. Is it just a mental construct? You know, it's really fun in a lot of ways to explore and see what's possible, with our consciousness expanding. Because the one thing I know, and I'm sure you know it as well, and your listeners or viewers will, we are finite minds trying to understand the infinite on this side of the veil. We choose the veil of forgetfulness to come here and have the experiences. And we forget that we are this infinite spirit that's connected in the sense of oneness. And we're just all these different expressions of it on this side. So there's really no way, So like I have some friends that are a different denomination, raised in a different denomination than I was raised church-wise. And the battles going back and forth of who has it right. And I'm like, don't you get it? None of us have it right. It's impossible to have it right. There's no way for us here to truly understand the nature of the infinite quantum universe that we live in. There's none. We can speculate. We can, I feel like sometimes I am jumping on a trampoline, peeking over the fence and getting a glimpse and a little hint here and a perception there, and, trying to do my best to make the sense of it and bring it back. But when I asked Spirit about it one time, they laughed. I feel like sometimes they just pat me on the head like they're there. We love you. You don't need to understand it. But I'm like, I want to know. And they showed me a goldfish in a goldfish bowl. And they said, think of the goldfish. And if you were trying to explain to the goldfish, who's only lived in this bowl or in an aquarium their entire life, what the ocean was like, they would have no ability to even imagine that because of the constraints of their physical environment in which they have lived. And so they said, unlike that goldfish, who would be in great danger and peril if he found himself one day in the ocean, he wouldn't know what the heck to do, and he'd probably be eaten pretty darn quick or starved because there's no hand, sprinkling the food above him. Unlike that goldfish, our spirits will not be in any danger on the other side. We will have this grand adventure of exploration and becoming and unfolding, so there's nothing to fear of it, but it's impossible from the confines of where we are on this side of the veil to understand the concept and what's truly possible on the other side, which is why I love so much talking to people who have near-death experiences and bring back some of a little bit more of the, oh yeah, and this is what it's like. I'm like, love, love, love it.
So to go way back to the beginning, what would your advice be for people who are curious and want to open themselves up to the kinds of things you've been describing to us today?
Sure. I would say first of all, do that intuition exercise so that you can start to trust. The other thing to do is a real quick one. My dog is dreaming here, and you hear him in the background. Sorry about that. He's making squeaky noises, which is funny because he's a big old Malinois. So he's like, to hear him making these dainty squeaks, I'm like, really? Okay, dude. I don't know what you're dreaming about, but it's fun. Dogs do dream. Don't let anybody tell you. And anyone who says dogs don't dream, don't have dogs. Okay. Anyway, but to tune into your intuition, if you put your hands over your gut, that solar plexus area, and you just take a minute and you ask yourself, okay, if I think of something that is a definite yes in my life, and then I notice, what do I feel? Do you feel warmth? Do you feel vibration? Do you feel expansive? What is your yes to your body, to your energy? And then do the same thing and get a no. And like for me, if I do the no, I get more of a condensed, contracted, cold kind of feeling. So once you have a yes and a no for yourself, you can then use that also to say, okay, is this a course I should take? Is this a teacher I should study? Is this a book I should listen to? Is this a podcast I should tune into? Is this a Zoom class? Um, I I think it's really important that when you go to a reader or a teacher that you're going to study with, anything that they tell you initially should ring true. It should either make sense to your brain, it should ring true to your heart, it should feel right to your gut. We have these three centers where we actually have brain cells and synapses in all three places. It's amazing. It's like it's a big secret that's finally out. Like you have brain cells even in your gut and in your heart. It's like and they work together, and they're most powerful when they work together. When your thoughts and your feelings and your gut intuitive knowings are all in alignment, man, that's when magic happens and you're unstoppable in accomplishing things. So I would say learn how to tune into that, and then find somebody that when they're speaking to you, you go, yeah, oh, that makes sense, or oh, that rings true, or that feels right. If any of those three start going, no, something's off, that's not the one for you, right? Doesn't mean necessarily that they're wrong or they're not legit in whatever they're doing. It just means it's not a match for you. And you want to make sure that if you're spending your time and money learning from somebody, you want to feel that, oh, I like them. I like what they're saying. It feels right for me. And it might be right for me in this moment. It may not be right for you, would have been right
Mhm.
for you 5 years ago or 5 years from now. I am teaching a retreat in Sedona, November 8th, 9th, and 10th of this year. I'm co-teaching that with a shaman and a Western mystic by the name of Craig Janjulis. And it's called A Path to Empowerment. And it's all about accessing your intuitive abilities and developing your spiritual gifts. So, that's there. But you can also just go have a reading with somebody. If you like what they do, say, hey, would you teach me how to do that? If you've always wondered about tarot cards, well, you can go online now. There's so many things on
Yeah.
YouTube and there's classes everywhere. But again, use your intuition, right? Because even if your friend raves about it, it might be perfect for your friend, but you might need something a little different, right? Because again, some of us are more left-brained, more right-brained, more balanced, more whole, more heart, more, and what's the intention? If your intention is just, I want to be playful, I'm curious, I just want to see what's what, okay, cool. There's not a lot of risk behind it. If you're like, I think I want to quit my corporate job and do this as a living to be of service to people for the rest of my life, probably a little more important you do some research and make sure you're studying with the right people and getting the goods that you need,
Yeah.
right? So it really depends where you are on the spectrum. Um,
And so, if people through this interview have fallen in love with you and want to know more about you, head, heart, and gut,
yeah,
where can they find out more information about who you are, what you're doing, classes, all that sort of thing?
sure. Okay, so I have a website. It's aletheajacob.com. And my first name, Alethea, is spelled a little funny. It's Aletheia. So it looks like Alethea. My mother did that, and it's the silent E in my first name is the only quiet thing about me. But so it's aletheajacob.com. You, of course,